Hey, what's up you guys? Daisy Girls here back with another YouTube video. In today's video, I'm actually going to be sharing with you guys my labor and delivery story. It's not going to be too long, but then again, it's not going to be too short because I do want to include as much as possible. I'm probably going to be all over the place with the story because I remember like a few things like when I mentioned them. So if it seems like all over the place, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna try to tell a story as it happened. So my story starts back April 30th. That's when I started getting my contractions, and that's when I started timing them. From here on my phone, when I started timing them, it started at 6 a.m. and this was April 30th, like I was telling you guys, and they were lasting about 40 to 45 seconds. So they wouldn't last too long. And while I was timing them, they were like 7, 8, 9 to 10 minutes apart. So at this point, I wasn't really that worried because again, my contractions weren't that strong and they weren't too close together. So I wasn't worried and I wasn't thinking about going to the hospital whatsoever. I was just kind of telling myself that it was my body preparing itself for labor. So when your contractions are that far apart and only last those few seconds, the doctors say to wait till they're like 3 to 5 minutes apart and they last a minute. So I did start timing them just to make sure that I had them written down for when I did go to the hospital. I could let them know like the exact information of when my contractions started. That entire day I was getting contractions and I knew they were getting a little stronger because I was no longer able to sleep through them. By the afternoon, that's when they started lasting a full minute, and that's when they were getting like 3 to 7 minutes apart. So at this point I knew my body was doing something, like I was contracting and the mucus plug was starting to come out. So in my head I was just preparing myself for labor just in case I went in that same night or like within the few days. Now I didn't know what to expect because I've heard a lot of stories, seen a lot of videos that like their bodies can go from like 0 to 100, meaning like they can be fine one day and then the next day or like within the next few hours they go into labor. So I wasn't panicking, but at the same time I was still kind of nervous because like it could happen at any second of the day, and like I wouldn't know when because in my family nobody's water broke. So in my head I just thought I was gonna get really bad contractions, and when I went in I would be like dilated like 6 centimeters and I wouldn't have even known it. So I was just kind of nervous of, you know, dilating that much and then having to go to the hospital and then giving birth without the epidural or like something like that. So I was really scared. Now, my family did start getting a little worried. So just to be on the safe side, my aunt called me and told me, just go into the hospital to get checked to see how far along you are. If you are dilated, they'll let you know. And if you aren't, they'll just send you home. So I ended up going to the hospital that same day. It was 4:07 p.m. when I went to go get checked. The whole process isn't really too bad. They just check you in, get your information, ask you why you're going in. I just said I was getting contractions and I wanted to see how far along I was. So they got me in. The whole checking in process took about 20 minutes to get everything and then wait in the waiting room and then finally get put into like a waiting room area slash like hospital bed, if that makes sense. So they put me in the small rooms for now, and I had to put on a belly band so they can put the monitors under there and time my contractions and see how strong they are. So I was on that for about 5 minutes and then a doctor came in to check me. So my doctor checked my cervix to see how far dilated I was, and I was only 2 centimeters dilated. So at that point I knew my body was doing something and preparing itself for labor, so I went ahead and let my family know as well. The doctor let me know that she wanted me to stay on the monitor for 30 more minutes and then she would come back to see how my contractions were doing and if they increased or if they went down. The 30 minutes go by and then she comes to check on me. The contractions haven't moved, like they haven't gone up or anything. They just kind of stayed at the same pace. So then a different doctor comes in, and I forgot what his name was, but it was a guy doctor. It wasn't the nurse that was with me at first. So he comes in. I think it was because he was the only guy that was on call, like the delivery doctors, I guess you could say. So he came in, told me that everything was okay, told me that my body was doing what it needed to do to give birth. So to go home, relax, and like not worry, right? So I was like, okay. So that same night I came home. I was still timing my contractions. At that point I'd say they were like a 3 out of 10, like rating the pain. I think I went on 2 more days with those solid contractions. May 2nd is when I started getting more contractions. I have them here on my phone. So here I started getting contractions for a minute, almost a minute and 20 seconds. and these were 8 to 7 to 4 minutes apart. So with these contractions, I knew they were getting stronger because I started having to breathe through them. Now me, I would say that I take pain pretty well, so for me to like have to stop and breathe through the pain is kind of like, okay, like I know this is painful and it's getting like worse, or like the pain's increasing because I have to breathe through them. With these contractions, I'd say the pain was like at a 5 out of 10. I didn't want to go to the hospital because the doctor had just told me that I was at 2 centimeters dilated, so I didn't want to waste a day of going to the hospital and then getting sent back home. So I stayed in bed. I was still timing my contractions, letting my family know everything that was going on. That same day, I actually did end up going to the hospital. Here on my phone, I went in exactly at 3, and again I had to check in and wait in the waiting room until they finally called me back in. They went ahead and checked my cervix again, and I was still 2.5 centimeters dilated. So the same male doctor came and told me to go back home, relax, and that everything was gonna be okay, and if I noticed any bleeding or anything unusual, then to go into the hospital, or obviously if my water breaks or I started getting contractions 3 to 5 minutes apart. I came back home. I was in bed. At this point, I really couldn't take the pain anymore, but obviously like you have to. So I kind of just stayed in bed the entire time because I didn't want to put my body into any stress. So I was in my bed watching a TV show on my phone, and then I had to get up to go to the restroom. I got up and I took 2 steps, and then I just feel like a gush go down my leg. So at the back of my head, I was like, oh my god, my water just broke. Like a few seconds passed by and like the liquid stops, and I just tell my boyfriend, I'm like, babe, my water just broke. And he's like, nah. And I'm like, yes, my water just broke. And he's like, okay. So then the leaking starts again. Like I started leaking, and then I call my mom and let her know that my water broke. So then she comes inside, she gets a towel, cleans up the mess, and then we pack everything into the car to get to the hospital. So we're on our way to the hospital, and I start noticing that my contractions are like increasing in pain. At this point, I'm starting to like hold on to different things in the car because of the pain. We get to the hospital and I get checked in, let them know that my water breaks, so they do the information really fast, and since I was already there earlier, my information was already in the system. So it went by quicker than it did those other 2 times that I went to the hospital. So I waited in the waiting room for I'd say about 10 minutes, and then they finally called me into the same room that I was in the day that I went in. So they put me in a waiting room again. I changed into a gown and I put on a belly band, and they started monitoring my contractions. These contractions, I kid you not, they were like starting to like spike on the chart. Like some of them would be off the chart, and then some of them would be like normal contractions. I would describe it as like a period cramp times like 5, because at that point the pain was getting pretty bad. So I knew the pain was getting bad when I started wiggling my feet and having to hold on to something. Now I still had to control my breathing. Keep in mind, because if you stop breathing, then you stop breathing for your baby. So to make sure that my water did rupture, they did like a little test on me. They swabbed my cervix with a Q-tip, and then they put it like in a little container that tells you yes or no if your water did break. So as soon as the thing came back positive that it ruptured, she let me know how far along dilated I was, and I was 4 centimeters. So whenever you're 4 centimeters and on, they decide to keep you. So I went ahead and stayed that day. And the doctor let me know that they were going to do blood tests to make sure that I'm safe to get the epidural. So she asked me, do you want to get the epidural? And I said yes right away. So as soon as I said yes, she sent in someone, they did blood work, and then they took it to make sure that I can take it. So while I was in there, I was actually alone by myself. I only had my phone with me. That was my only source of communication because of all the COVID stuff. They don't allow any guests with you until you're actually in a labor and delivery room. So my family was outside still waiting for me, and my boyfriend was as well. And I was alone, so I was kind of scared and worried, like, oh my god, what if something happens and I have no way of like having them here with me. So I was just kind of letting my family know through my phone like everything that was happening, and I only had like 4%, so by the time everything happened my phone had died already. So I was still getting contractions, I still was wiggling my feet and having to grab onto something because of the pain. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I'm gonna be truthful as much as possible. At this point I was starting to clench my butt because of the pain, and I don't know why I was doing it. I think it was just like a body instinct to do, or something that my body was doing on its own because of the pain. So that's when I started kind of to panic, because obviously I wasn't with anybody, so I didn't have someone to distract me from the pain. I'd say about 2 hours later is when they finally came to get me to move me to a labor and delivery room. And as soon as they brought me into a room, they let me know that they were gonna put another bag of IV fluid in me. They had already had one running in the waiting room, so I needed to get 2 bags done so that I can get the epidural. And I was kind of frustrated at this point because I had asked for the epidural a long time ago. So the fact that I still had to get another IV fluid done was kind of aggravating because I wanted to get the epidural already because I didn't want to go through more pain. So as soon as I got to the labor and delivery room, I had to use the restroom. So I let them know like, hey, can I go to the restroom? So at first the doctors were like, no, we're gonna have to give you a bedpan and you use the restroom there. And I was like, so I was like, you know what, never mind. So as soon as I said never mind, they were like, no, yeah, just go use the restroom. Let me just help you get there so I can take your IV bag with you. And I was like, okay. So I go in the restroom, I close the door. At that point, I'm scared to use the restroom because what if I do like a push and then like she ends up coming out? So I was scared to use the restroom. So I was there for like a good 30 minutes by myself. And the nurses kept coming to check on me. They're like, you're not pushing, are you? And I was like, no. So I finally finished using the restroom and I get back into bed, and that's when the pain started getting a little worse. My contractions started getting a lot stronger. I'd say the pain was like a 7 out of 10. So I let the doctor know the pain, so she went ahead and checked my cervix, and I was at 6.5 centimeters dilated. So I was kind of feeling the pain at that point. Like that's when I started grunting from the pain, like doing little sounds here and there and like holding on to the bed rail. So that's when the doctor told me, we just need to finish at least half this bag of fluid, then you can get your epidural. So my method of dealing with the pain was kind of counting. So I would count from like 1 to 30, or depending on how long the contraction lasted is how much I would count. So if it was 30 seconds, then I would count 1 to 30, or if it was like a minute, then I would count from 1 to 60. And that is what helped me the most. I feel like that's what helped me get my mind off the pain because I was concentrated on counting and not like the pain. As soon as I reached 7 centimeters when she checked me the next time after that, I kind of told the doctor, I was like, I really want the epidural, and she was like, okay. So she went ahead and called the doctor to bring the epidural. I was already halfway done with the bag of fluids that they gave me. So she calls in the doctor and he finally comes in after like 20 minutes, and they just let me know how the pain's gonna feel from the epidural, the needle, the like little tube that goes in your back, something like that. And then they tell me how to position myself. So I had to do crisscross and then arch my back and then put my neck all the way like this and then keep it like that, and to keep breathing through my contractions. As soon as I sat in that position is when I started feeling more pressure down there. So as soon as I started feeling the pressure, I started telling the doctor, I feel pressure. And she's like, okay, that means your baby is positioning itself into your birth canal to come out. So she told me, while you're getting the epidural, you're gonna have to continue breathing and you can't move, because if you move, something can go wrong and your body can get hurt. So I was like, okay. So I'm sitting there wondering how the hell I'm gonna get through this pain because I kept getting contractions while they were putting the epidural. So again, my method was counting. So at that point they were putting the epidural and I counted from 1 to 100. By the time I counted from 1 to 100, it was over, and I just felt like a slight pinch and like cold going in my back and a sting, but it didn't hurt, not one bit. So after that, I was still getting contractions. I could still feel everything, and I was asking questions as to like when the epidural would kick in, and she said within 20 minutes. So I had to wait 20 minutes laying flat on my back with my legs laying straight out. So after the 20 minutes go by, they finally call in my boyfriend. I called him from the hospital phone because my phone was dead, and before that he had been checking up on me. They just weren't letting him in because obviously I wasn't in a labor and delivery room yet. So they finally let him in, and as soon as he comes in, I am still in pain and I'm like going like this with my head on the bed, and he's like, I feel like I'm gonna faint. So I'm like, oh my god, don't tell me that because like I'm going through a lot right now. So he was just making me laugh. At that point I did feel a little more comfortable because I had him there. So I was distracted, and that's when I started noticing that I didn't feel pain anymore and I just felt pressure. So the doctor comes in and she tells me, as soon as you start feeling pressure, go ahead and let me know, because that means that baby's coming down and I want to see how far dilated you are. Keep in mind, if I forgot to mention, while they were putting me the epidural, I was already 8 centimeters dilated. So she said as soon as we lay her back down, she might be at 9 centimeters dilated already. So one of the times that she checked me after I had gotten the epidural, I was already 9 centimeters dilated. So as soon as she checked me, she told me that she was gonna go ahead and call my doctor already. And my doctor that was going to deliver the baby wasn't going to be my lady doctor for my OBG. It was going to be a male doctor that was on call that night. She went ahead and proceeded to tell me that the doctor isn't going to get there for another 30 to 20 minutes. Keep in mind I'm already at 9 centimeters dilated, and like literally it can happen like that. So my family was really mad at that point that they had to make me wait, and I was already that far dilated. So she kept telling me, if you feel pressure, don't push, like don't push at all, because if you do, then baby's gonna come out because she's already there. So I waited for like 15 more minutes, and then I told her again, I feel pressure and I feel like my body's pushing on its own. So she went ahead and checked me again, and she didn't say anything, and she's like, no, you're fine. So she steps out of the room, and me and my boyfriend continue talking, and then she comes back in and she's like, okay, you're ready. And I just kind of look at my boyfriend like, what? And she's like, you're ready. And I was like, what do you mean I'm ready? She's like, you're already 10 centimeters dilated. The doctor's almost here. So don't push at all and just wait a few more minutes. And my family was pissed. So I was upset because like it's not up to me when the baby gets to come out, you know, like it's up to her. Like she'll come out whenever she wants to. Like I can't stop my body from pushing. Like I literally felt my body pushing on its own, and I was still like clenching my butt because I was afraid of her just popping out. I was nervous at that point because, you know, like I'm already 10 centimeters dilated, I'm ready to go, but there's no doctor. And she kept telling me like, if you feel the need to push, then we'll go ahead and call some other doctors that we have on call who are very experienced and this and that, like trying to play it off and to calm me down, to reassure me that there's other doctors just in case, right? The 20 minutes pass by and the doctor finally gets there. So they set everything up, bring in where they're gonna weigh the baby, where they're gonna place her after, and set up like her bath in the little corner. And then the doctor has like his stuff to stitch me up and stuff. They get everything set up. They put my legs on top of some stand thingies to where my part is exposed. And then they rub like this orange stuff all over my legs and like my area and my stomach. They usually put it like during surgeries if they're like gonna open you or something. So that was new. I had never seen that before, so I was like, what's going on? As soon as the doctor gave the okay to everybody, that's when like stuff got real. So as soon as the doctor said, okay, we're ready, they went ahead and told me how I was gonna push. So I had to put my shin all the way down and I had to hold both my legs with both my arms. So as soon as they said, okay, go, I had to give a really big push. I had to inhale and then exhale. That's when I gave my first push. And then I ran out of breath by myself. So I had to take another deep breath and then do another push. In that second push is when everybody was like, go, go, go. And then I just hear my boyfriend say, oh my God, she's right there, babe, push. So then I gave it my all that second push, and then she finally came out. And then I just hear her crying. They put her on my tummy and I see her, and at this point I'm already starting to cry. So I'm crying, and then my boyfriend's like, oh my God. And then they're like, Dad, are you ready to cut the umbilical cord? So he goes to cut the umbilical cord, and then they take them a few pictures. So they took him a picture, and then she stayed on my belly for like a minute, and then they took her to weigh her, and then they were cleaning her up a little bit. While they were doing that for her, they were stitching me, and the doctor said it was a 1st-degree tearing, so it wasn't too bad, and I only got 2 stitches. They were sewing me up, and during the sewing you don't feel anything. During the pushing as well, you don't feel anything. You just feel a lot of pressure. If you guys are curious as to what you feel, you just feel a lot of pressure. You don't feel pain. Some people are different with the epidural. Sometimes it wears off and they need to put more, but for me, I just had that one bag of epidural because I was so far along, so it lasted me a good while. Like I was saying, after they were taking her measurements and everything, she came out 5 pounds and 8 ounces with 18 inches. And she was actually really, really small. From me, I thought my baby was gonna come out really big because of how big my belly was, but it was the complete opposite. So she came out really, really tiny. After that, they put her on my chest so we could do skin to skin for a few minutes, and then get her latched onto my breast so she can feed for a little bit. We stayed in the labor and delivery room for about another hour just to ourselves. For a little bit, they took her to the nursery just to make sure that her sugar was okay, her blood was okay, like everything was okay with her and that she was healthy. So that took about 30 minutes. So they took her for 30 minutes, brought her back, and then I did more skin to skin and more breastfeeding. And then after the hour finally finished, they took us into another room. So in that other room, they proceeded to clean me up down there because after birth you continue to bleed, so they had to be changing my pads for me because I couldn't feel my legs. And right after birth, they have to massage your belly for you, and it feels a little bit uncomfortable, but it's to get your uterus to start contracting by itself to get back to its regular size. And while they're doing that, they're taking care of you, but they're also taking care of your baby. So they're coming in to check every so often, like their temperatures and stuff. just to make sure that they're okay, especially with my daughter because she was so little. So that was a really good thing that they checked on both of us every few hours. Everything went well that night. Everything went extremely perfect. She came out very healthy. My labor went so fast. It was only 4 hours that I was in there. So I'm super thankful that it went by so fast. So that is it as far as my labor and delivery story. I am gonna do a postpartum video, but that's gonna be like in a few videos from now. So if you guys like this video, please make sure to leave a big thumbs up. And if you aren't already, please make sure to subscribe down below for any future videos. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.